welcome everybody to another midweek teaching. And this teaching is going to stem off of the last one where we talked about Satan's little season. Is it past or is it present? And by the way, folks, there's lots of folks that are out there that have the little season position. I might suggest, by the way, if you don't mind me doing this right out the gate, I recommend, in fact, some of you might already be subscribed to her because she's far more popular than I am, is There's No Place Like Home. That's the name of her channel. A lovely woman there, very, very kind. And she is really good, I think, and very level-headed at displaying these positions, including little season. She has a question the narrative series. And in that, she might even be able to link you to some other folks that have the position of the little season. In the meantime, though, I decided that I also wanted to take the position to show you the more allegorical view of the 1,000 years, and give a full preterist view of chapter 20 in the book of Revelation. So the first thing we're going to do is deal with the 1,000-year controversy. So let's go to Revelation chapter 20. And here we are, folks, in Revelation chapter 20. And as I mentioned in the last video, it says, I saw an angel come down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit, right? And a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. Okay? And so the question is the word 1,000, what is it symbolizing if it's not literal? And I'm going to suggest to you that when we go to the Old Testament, we can go there and see how the number 1,000 is used consistently throughout Scripture, particularly in the Old Testament. And I'm going to suggest to you it generally seems to represent overwhelming victory, overwhelming completion, overwhelming fullness and fulfillment. Okay? And if we see some scriptures that use it in that way, in a kind of a symbolic and allegorical way, then we can continue discerning chapter 20 with that type of view. Okay? So let me take you to 1 Samuel 18:7. All right? And this is just after David conquered Goliath. All right? It says, and the women answered one another as they played, and they were celebrating. And King Saul was king at the time, and they were singing, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Now, best as I can tell in Scripture, do you want to know how many people David took down thus far in this moment at this time? One. That was it. Just Goliath, right? And yet they're saying his 10,000s, right? So I'm going to suggest to you it's because of his overwhelming victory against Goliath. They're celebrating, and so they're using this kind of hyperbole because this young man, without any armor, taking the literal interpretation, grabs a slingshot and a rock and takes down one of the greatest warriors that was alive at the time, and he's this huge Goliath, right? And he's like 9-10 feet tall. So why are they using the number 1,000 here? Overwhelming victory. Okay, that's what I'm going to suggest. They're using the number 1,000. And by the way, they repeat it again, which kind of confirms what I was saying in the last teaching, that just because something repeats, if it's allegorical, if it's symbolic, then it's symbolic. Kind of like if you see sea beasts in Daniel and their kingdoms, well, they were symbolic of kingdoms. And when you go to Revelation and you see a sea beast, it's still a kingdom. It's symbolic of a kingdom. It doesn't change the fact that it's symbolic, right? And so in 1 Samuel 21:11, it says, and the servants of Achish said unto him, is not this David the king of the land? Did they not sing one to another of him in dances, saying, Saul hath slain his thousands and David his 10,000s? See, they repeat it again. Clearly, still symbology. And the 1,000 there is being used, I think, in a hyperbolic fashion to display an overwhelming victory. All right. Psalm 50, 10-12. For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. Okay, so again, is it literally 1,000? Right? I'm going to suggest no, this is more about the fullness and the completion, because if there's 999 hills in the world, you're going to see, well, then that would make God a liar. Right? Or if there's 1,001, if we're going to take it literal. Clearly, we're not going to take it literal. We're going to say that what he's saying is he's using the number 1,000 as a number of completion and fullness, and it's all his. That's the point, and that's the point of the section. So let's continue here. It says, I know all the fowls of the mountains and the wild beasts of the field. They're all mine, is what he's saying. And if I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine, and here it is, and the fullness thereof. See, it's the fullness. So he could have said, and the cattle upon all the hills. But see, he went out of his way here to write 1,000 so that we have a good connector to see how the term 1,000 is used in the Old Testament. And I think we should carry forward because the book of Revelation is very symbolic. And of course, John is a Jewish man, and I think he's drawing a lot. I would think most people argue that the book of Revelation is not only the most symbolic book of the New Testament, but it's the most Hebraic written type of book in the New Testament. All right, but we'll continue. 91:7, and also in the book of Psalms, 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand. Now, clearly at your right hand is not going to be literally 10,000 people, no matter how you slice it, right? So notice how the term 1,000 is being used, right? It's being used, again, I'm going to suggest to describe overwhelming victory, great power and fullness. That's the point, I think, of the number. Deuteronomy 7:9. Know therefore that the Lord thy God, he is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. Now, if this is Old Testament setup, folks, best as I know, pick your chronology on this, but best as I know, how long was the Old Covenant around for? 1,500 years, 1,400 years? If you want to change the number, if it's 1,000 generations and a generation is 40 years, and I would suggest that it is, that's 40,000 years. And I don't think that's the intent of what is written here. I think the idea, right, would his mercy then all of a sudden end? I don't think so. I'm suggesting strongly to you that the number 1,000 here is being used in such a way to show overwhelming fullness, overwhelming completion, if you will, and victory and fullness. Okay? So I think that's the vibe of the number. And if I dare say it, I think that we still use this term in a lot of ways, right? Man, I'm batting 1,000 at this, and you're not even playing baseball, right? Why are we using the 1,000? We're talking about how we're really, really, perfection, if you will, right? Or I've told you 1,000 times, and really you probably only said it 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 20, right? And you use the number 1,000 still to this day. We'll continue. Judges 15:15-16. And he found, this is Samson, and he found a new jawbone of an ass and put forth his hand and took it and slew 1,000 men therewith. And then he repeats the same number. And Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jaw of an ass have I slain 1,000 men. Okay, so do you really think, he was going 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I don't think so. I think the idea is overwhelming victory, overwhelmingly successful, right? And I'm going to suggest strongly that that's what's going on here, right? And I think that's why it's in the Old Testament. And I think that's why John is using the number and was probably figuring, right, that that's where we would draw from, because what do we always say? The New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. So when we don't go to the Old Testament to understand, if you will, the New Testament, I think we take that statement and ignore it. No, where do we go to really, truly try to do our best to understand the New Testament? Well, if the New Testament is revealed in the Old Testament, when we have the New Testament, then that's where we should be going to make sure that they line up and they come together. All right. And just again, guys, I want to give you 10 witnesses. All right. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to give you a few more examples to really kind of, show you that if nothing else, it's certainly legitimate to take the number 1,000 as symbology, just like the rest of Revelation, right? 7-headed sea beasts, right? What the 7 heads are 7 kings, right? A lamb that talks like a dragon, right? Right? It tells you, the waters are what? Just water? No, it's not literal water, although there is literal water. He says the waters are peoples and nations, right? The woman is what? The harlot woman is what? It's a city. How does a woman become a city? it's allegory. He's using symbology. So it's fair to use symbology, particularly in the book of Revelation, because it's just simply loaded with it, right? So Joshua 23:10, one man of you shall chase 1,000. Why did he pick 1,000, right? And what's the idea here? Is it literal that one person will chase 1,000 people away? I don't think that's the point of the text. It says, for the Lord your God, he it is that fighteth for you as he hath promised you. So he's saying, because I'm with you, don't worry, whoever comes against you, they're going to end up running away from you. I don't think the idea, though, is, one man will, you'll chase 1,000, right? If it's 999, is it a lie? No, I think the number is there to say you will have an overwhelming victory because I'm with you. See, that's the point, and that's how he's using the number. Very, very consistent in the Old Testament using this number that way. And it's always a rounded number, right? And they sacrificed sacrifices unto the Lord and offered burnt offerings unto the Lord on the morrow after that day, even 1,000 bullocks, 1,000 rams, and 1,000 lambs, right? You're going to have to make up your own mind, but I'm going to suggest the roundness of that number, right? And it being 3,000 of them, that's quite a few, if you don't mind me suggesting. And it's like literally 1,000 of each one. I'm going to suggest he's trying to say a grand amount, like a lot, right? A very full and overwhelming sacrifice to the Lord across the board. And I think that's why the number 1,000 is being used there, okay? And notice it says, with their drink offerings and sacrifices in abundance for all Israel. So I think the point is it's an abundant amount of sacrificing that they're doing here, okay? So again, the term 1,000 being used, and I'm just again going to suggest strongly, wasn't meant to be they were actually literally counting 1,000 bullocks and 1,000 rams exactly and 1,000 lambs exactly. Okay. 2 Chronicles 7:5, and King Solomon offered a sacrifice of 22,000, that's 22,000 oxen, and 120,000 sheep. Okay, so that's 142,000 animals. Okay, and it says, so the king and all the people dedicated the house of God. And I'm going to suggest to you that if you did a study on this, that it would work out to something like they're basically having to sacrifice like 24 hours a day at like every minute. And so again, I'm going to suggest hyperbole to express an exaggeration, much like when we say, I told you 1,000 times, don't put your stuff in that corner or whatever, right? We're exaggerating to express, to bring out expression and fullness, completion, and an overwhelming sacrifice here, the overwhelming dedication and appreciation. And Isaiah 7:23, and it shall come to pass in that day that every place shall be where there were 1,000 vines at 1,000 silverlings, it shall even be for briars and thorns. So then we have to, by the way, 1,000 silverlings is silver shekels, okay? So again, is it literally 1,000 vines and literally 1,000 shekels, silver shekels? I don't think so. I think the point is he's kind of actually doing a prophecy, best as I could tell here, and he's going, you know what? There were 1,000 vines. I don't think exactly. I think the point is there was a lot, plentiful, completion, a fullness of vines, which suggests lots of fruit, if you will, and good things happening for you. 1,000 silverlings, silver shekels, meaning you had a lot of abundance and a good economy, etc., but it's going to be for briars and thorns, see? So again, I'm going to suggest to you strongly that the number is being painted here and used here to suggest a very strong amount of and a fulfilling amount. Okay, so again, overwhelming fullness, overwhelming completion, and overwhelming victory. All right. So when we go to Revelation 20 and we read about the 1,000 years, right? I'm going to suggest to you that's the same deal, that it's about his overwhelming victory. And we will continue, hopefully, Lord willing, to further discuss Revelation chapter 20, and I'll be offering my interpretation. So, guys, I just wanted to show you what the 1,000 years might indeed represent. And if we can take that and take that position and use it to describe an overwhelming victory, the overwhelming victory of Christ in the first century, then we can interpret Revelation 20 that way. And I intend to do that. And hopefully you'll give me the opportunity to slowly but surely work through Revelation chapter 20, because it is a packed chapter. It really is. And again, I'm going to suggest that all of you, if feel free, this is, you get to read and determine these things for yourself as well. Read it allegorically, and then read and symbolically, and then read it literally, and see where you end up and see what sits and resonates with you. So I'm going to continue to offer an interpretation, if you will, looking at the 1,000 years in the light of what Christ succeeded in the first century. All right. And so, Lord willing, I'll be able to continue to do that. Hopefully you'll hang in there with me and give me a shot in continuing to give you an interpretation of Revelation chapter 20, little by little. In the meantime, guys, thanks for giving me this opportunity to present my case on the 1,000 years, because it certainly is a 1,000-year controversy, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you again. In the meantime, remember, do all things with grace and peace.